Good morning and welcome to the Empire Metals Limited investor presentation. Throughout this recorded presentation, investors will be in listen-only mode. Questions are encouraged and be submitted at any time via the Q&A tab situated on the top right-hand corner of your screen. Please just simply type in your questions at any time and press send. The company may not be in a position to answer every question it receives during the meeting itself. However, the company will review all questions submitted today and pass responses where it is appropriate to do so. Before we begin, I'd like to submit the following poll. And I'd now like to hand over to Sean Bunn, Managing Director from Empire Metals. Good morning.
Yeah, good morning, everybody, and welcome to the to our first seminar of this particular year. We've got a lot to cover this morning, so I'll get straight into the slideshow, and we'll introduce the other people on the call shortly. So before we start, I just need to quickly remind people that the presentation will have forward-looking statements. We're not using this to encourage people, to invest or sell. So just be aware of that the content is obviously been checked by our competent people. So we are presenting the best and most up-to-date information we have available today. On to what we consider to be our highlights. A lot happened in the last few weeks. We have obviously made a number of announcements about acquisitions, and we have started to build a comprehensive portfolio of what we consider to be high-grade copper gold exploration and development projects, particularly here still in the West Australian region, mainly focusing within the Yilgarn. But we've also picked up a very interesting, very prospective copper gold target in Victoria on the east coast within the Staly Arc. Our current focus remains on our two high-grade gold prospects, those being the Eclipse and the recently acquired Gendarby gold project. These are only 55 kilometres northeast of Kalgoorlie, which is within the eastern goldfields of Western Australia, and an area, that is, extremely well known for major gold discoveries. And I think in the last, since discovering the Golden Mile, which Kalgoorlie is famous for, there's something like 60 million ounces of gold has been removed from that 1 square mile. So, we're right in the centre of the gold action, and continue to look to develop those high-grade gold targets in the coming months. The other important news that we've announced recently was the acquisition of 3 highly prospective gold and copper projects, these being located at Pitfield on the western edge of the Yilgarn Craton. So if you look to the slide that we've got up at the moment, you'll see at the base there the Yilgarn Craton highlighted. So Pitfield lies on the west side of that, on the left, which sits quite close to something called the Darling Fault. The Staly Project, which is in Victoria on the east coast, and the Walton Copper Gold Project, which lies within the Southern Cross domain, which is virtually the centre of the Yilgarn Craton and lies west of Kalgoorlie. We've discussed a number of times previously the strength of our board, the depth and diversity within it. We'll cover that shortly. And I'm obviously quite happy that we now can start talking about our future exploration success, particularly once we start to develop drilling targets within these new acquisitions. I'm pleased today to say that we're joined by Dr. Neil O'Brien, who's visiting Perth at the moment and is on the call. I'll introduce Neil, and also our Finance Director, Greg Kunzel. Neil, if you want to just say a few words.
Yeah, thanks, Sean. Hi, everybody from Perth. This is my first trip to Western Australia. Believe me, I've been dying to get here since we decided to take up some opportunities here, and as soon as the state government, lifted some of its basically opened up the state again from COVID restrictions, I got down here to meet Sean and see some of the properties and get my own perspective on it. And I tell you, the first and foremost thing you see right, on the way from the airport, I saw from the airport to the hotel here is it's clearly obvious this is the number one mining jurisdiction in the world. And I'm just looking out my hotel window here and I can see the BHP and Rio Tinto towers in downtown Perth here. You're never very far from the premium mining jurisdiction in the world. And believe me, it is a pleasure to be working in such a jurisdiction. And Sean has been working hard with our small local team that he's building here, right, to bring in some opportunities that he'll explain in a bit more depth here. And we'll be talking about. I seem to have dropped off here.
We can hear you. It's just that we lost a bit of audio quality, so we've just taken your camera down.
Okay. Thanks very much. Okay, yeah. Anyways, I came down here as soon as I could. I've been up on a couple of field trips with Sean and Greg and some of the local team here to see Eclipse, Jim Dalby, where we've been getting some excellent results to support our decision to be in the Eastern Goldfields, just 50 minutes up the road from the Kalgoorlie super pit. That's still in production after all these years, as Sean mentioned. I've also been up to the Pitfield Copper Gold Project, straight up the coast, as Sean pointed out, and that's one of three exciting new projects that we've called Century Projects. Large land positions, and the Pitfield clearly has got the potential for a giant mineral system there. And we've got lots of land, and it is very exciting. I'm coming out of this with an exciting feeling that we got 4 quality projects. We're building a good local team here, and we're in the #1 mining jurisdiction. So I think it's exciting times for Empire shareholders. And I'll leave it here to Sean to pick that up and explain a bit more about the projects and people. Thanks.
Yeah, thanks, Neil. Neil mentioned the team that we're starting to build. It's early days. I'm pleased to say that we were able to bring in some excellent expertise in the form of. Well, initially with Louisa, our exploration geologist, who's doing a PhD. She's studying currently at the university here at Curtin, but specialising in high quality scientific approach and technology to add to her years of experience as a field geologist. Jesus Garcia Nieto is still based out of Europe, and he's been largely consulting to us now for many years. So we've kept in contact with Jesus. We use his experience, particularly in the copper fields, and the final part of the team at the moment is Ed Bolter. So Ed is an exploration consultant, many years of experience in identifying exploration targets, has worked for Goldfields in that role, worked for Western Mining Corporation previously in that role. So we've got the makings of a strong technical team, And we continue to look to add to that team over the coming months and bring in more exploration management and fieldwork teams as we move on to these four key exploration targets. A quick overview of our current capital structure and major shareholders. I won't go into great deal here. This is information that's readily available, but we thought we'd highlight the market cap at the moment. It's just over £7 million. We did a raising last week, as everyone will be aware. We raised £1.7 million. So we think we're well funded to move forward and tackle a lot of activity. A lot of groundwork will be done in the coming months on these four very important exploration targets that we've started to develop.
I think just to add there, Sean, I think it's important to note that prior to the funding, the company was actually funded through its existing work programs for the rest of the year. Following that, so we did have a reasonable treasury even prior to that. What the additional funds that we raised last week has allowed us to do is accelerate and increase the size of the programs, particularly at the new targets at Homeward Bound, which Sean will cover off. So post that raise, we're now in a very, very strong position financially.
Yes, thank you. I'll move on to the actual projects themselves. I think most people on the call will be familiar with our Eclipse project. It was our breakthrough project, if you like, in terms of bringing our exploration focus down to Western Australia, to the eastern goldfields of Western Australia. We hold a 75% interest in the Eclipse project. As we said earlier, it sits 55 kilometres northeast of Kalgoorlie. Eclipse itself was an old shaft in the late 1890s, early 1900s. So quite a high-grade producing gold mine in its day, and it was one of many in that particular area. So there is several hundred old mine workings around this region. And, basically it's an area that has developed a reputation for small high-grade targets, but it's been largely, very largely underexplored. So on a more global scale, looking for, I guess, the origin and the potential to find a high-grade and much larger target is something that we are now starting to put the evidence together, and through our geological team and our recent drilling, we are very hopeful that we will start to pinpoint where these structural controls are, and start to go back in with another drill program to develop much larger resources within these high grade lodes. So the key points here, I guess, are the Gendarby town site, the old Gendarby mining town, is adjacent to the Eclipse operation. It's within something we call the Canalpi terrain, and that sits alongside, structurally controlled by a major fault called the Expiry fault system. And so it's an area that we think is highly prospective. There are multiple resources been identified, small mines operating within close proximity. And then, as we said, further to the south of us lie some of the much larger gold discoveries in the last 20, 30 years. So Kanana Bell only sits a few kilometres further south on the way back down to Kalgoorlie. So quite an exciting area. We have completed over the last 2 years 118 holes that we've drilled, RC holes, and another 9 diamond holes have now been completed, and that has resulted in us identifying 2 additional lodes here, 2 additional parallel veins to the Eclipse. So what we call the Jack Stream strike, and a parallel lode there at twin shafts. So we now have to come back to these areas. We're completing our diamond drilling, and we're trying to connect. I'll just get to the next slide, sorry. We're trying to find the connection between these lodes. We believe that there's a major shear that's running a northwest-south, deeply stepping to the southwest. And we've tracked that now over 200 metres. With the extension into Jack Stream and further to the northwest where we believe it's open, we're looking to add another 300 metres to that strike length. So an overall target, if you like, well over 500 metres in length. And it's also, to date, we haven't yet drilled to depth to establish just where the high-grade zones are plunging. And that is part of our ongoing technical investigations to see where we should be drilling next in this particular target to get the most value from that drilling. I'll move on to Gendarby. In reality, the Gendarby project is a subset of, or Eclipse lies as a subset of the Gendarby project. So a much bigger area that we acquired, we entered into a tribute agreement with the license owner. It's another mining license. So we have access to a granted mining license, which gives us a clear pathway to get into production should we continue to identify high-grade economic ore zones. So we're quite excited about the fact that we now have expanded in this particular area our expiration targets by over 200%. So it's a major step forward. It's a great opportunity. There was a very large high-grade gold mine developed within this particular area, being the Gippsland South mine. It produced well over 30,000 ounces in its day, and again, it was a mine that was developed back in the 1900s, the early 1900s. So not much exploration has happened around those zones in the last 100 years. We're very excited about the idea that the trends that we've identified within the Eclipse license will continue to run along the Gendarby license area. So if you take a time to look to the picture on the right, what we are highlighting here within the 2 tenements now that we have access to, the Eclipse tenement being on the left, and the larger tenement being the one that we now call the Gendarby Project. The old workings, the old shafts are highlighted there, clearly fall into northwest, south, east trend lines. And our investigations to date are still trying to confirm just how much that indicates the direction of the shear, and are these things connected in terms of high-grade zones continuing along 2 or 3 kilometres worth of strike, as opposed to just appearing in very small lodes around these shafts. So a lot of our work is aimed at drilling deeper and tracking the shear. One of the key things that we very recently completed and initiated only a few weeks ago was our first RC program within Gendarby. We only drilled just under 1,700 metres, 17 holes, and we were really just doing that as a sort of a scouting exercise to pinpoint where we should be looking next, a priority, setting some priorities around our targets. Very pleased to report that the 4 holes that we put in around the Homeward Bound target, and just for reference, Homeward Bound is on the right-hand side on the eastern edge of the Gendarby license. So in that southern eastern corner, and one of the stellar holes that we hit, 5 meters at just under 9 grams, reported an intercept just under 41 grams per ton. So clearly a very exciting target and a very exciting intercept. A hole not far from that produced 3 meters at just under 9 grams. And on the opposite side of the homeward bound target, so some 50 odd meters apart, we hit another 3 meters at just under 10 grams. And the highest intercept in that hole was 26.2 grams per ton. So this has really changed our thinking in terms of priority. We will definitely be heading back to homeward bound in the near future to continue to drill that particular target out. And we're continuing to put a geological model together to understand just what is controlling these high grade, this particular high grade target here at the Gendarby license. We will, of course, go back and look at the other targets that we've identified. We don't think that this is just a story about one particular shaft or one particular area. And we're still very excited about potential gold strikes at Bud's Find to the south and the Laurel Bulletin area to the south. So further work will commence in the next few weeks, and hopefully we'll continue to have some exciting news to present over the coming months. I'll move away from the Gendarby and Eclipse projects and onto the new acquisitions. Not to confuse people, the headline of this particular slide remains the Pitfield Copper Gold Project. That's our target in this particular area. We're not exactly going to be exploring for wildflowers, and whilst there is talc in the region, it's not necessarily our particular focus. But the highlight here is that this is an area, this particular basin, the Anduka Basin. There's a lot happened here geologically. It's controlled by a number of major structures. There's been large, major fluidizing events, hence the talc. And we think this is a highly prospective area, likely to generate a SEDEX copper target for us. There's certainly previous artisanal mining of copper in the region. A town site called Arano, just slightly to the west of our license area, was a major strike of copper that was mined again back in the 1800s, late 1800s. So we've got a numerous evidence of copper, high grade copper in the region. The basin itself, the Yilgarn Basin, is a Neoproterozoic basin, and that is an age that is, I guess, globally important for copper mineralization. It's exactly the same age of the rocks that you'll find within the African copper belt, and it's it's exactly the same area that the rock type that we would find in what we call the Paterson province of Western Australia, which is the host of copper gold mines such as Telfer and copper mines such as Nifty's. So we think it's an incredibly exciting target area for us. We've got a very large land holding here. So we've acquired through the deal with Century, we've acquired just over 1,615 square kilometres within 2 licenses. And this straddles the Anduka Basin. And so on the western edge of the basin, we've got the edge of the Anduka, that structure, and on the eastern side we have what we call the Darling Fault. So there's a lot happened in this particular area, and it's a geologically very exciting target for us. Some of the big companies here, BHP, CRA, Mount Isa Mine have all had a look at this area over 1950s, 1960s into the early 1980s. So there's a lot of interest from major groups, but no one has actually really gone back into this area and really done the hard yards in terms of exploration work. Moving on, we talked a little bit about the acquisition as well of the Staly Project as part of this package. The Staly Arc is a completely different geological structure to what we see at Pitfield. It's a massive arc that is well known in in geological terms. We've talked about it possibly being located as part of the Tasmanian Reed complex. So it's geologically highly prospective for copper porphyry, and we suspect that we will also have orogenic gold likely in a particular area. The arc runs quite close to the Stawell and Bendigo geological zones. This is a plus 80 million ounce province. And one of our peers, Staly Minerals, Australian listed company, drilled a discovery hole within the Staly Arc in 2019. They intercepted just under 6% copper over a length of 32 meters in a major lode that they identified, which is what they call the Thirsty Gossan. It's called the Cayley lode within that project. So we're very excited about the potential within this particular license area. We also secured through the partner access to a $500,000 Australian Victoria grant, Victorian government grant, which will co-fund exploration in this area. So just stepping out and having a look at where that is in terms of the the overall structural geology of Victoria, we can see on the right-hand side the highlighted where we have our license area in this Staly zone. So to the east is the Stawell gold mine. To the south was the discovery of the Gossan, Thirsty Gossan target. So we've got a very large land holding here that will enable us to come back in and start to target what we think will be an area highly prospective for a major copper gold system. The overall license area just sits under just under 1,000 square kilometres. So we're at 940 square kilometres of target in this particular region. Just zooming in a little bit further, there have been a number of exploration programs run within the Staly, but they've nearly always been run to date by government agencies. So they've been effectively looking to understand the general geology. They're not concentrated and sophisticated exploration projects, and we believe that with geophysics program leading to geochemistry leading to a drilling target identification, that we'll be able to quickly pinpoint some very prospective areas within this license for a copper discovery. The third part of the acquisition was an area called Walton, the Walton Copper Project. That's located in the Southern Cross domain of Western Australia. So we're back to the Yilgarn-Cratton. It's a greenstone belt. So again, it's a completely different geological origin to the other two projects. But again, the greenstone belts, particularly in the Southern Cross domain, are very well known for not only orogenic gold type deposits, but it's also very well known for volcanic hosted massive sulfide systems. So the Golden Grove is a major mining centre which sits within this entire belt further to the north. We've also seen a number of discoveries in the area and a number of producing mines not far from our domain. Ramillis Resources, for instance, is mining the Marta Gold operation not far within the same system. There's really no relevant exploration within our particular target area, and so this is very much largely starting from scratch, so to speak. Again, we've got good geophysics in the area, but we'll need to go back in and look at doing geochemistry next to try and identify copper, gold, or even lithium type targets in this region. It's quite well known for its pegmatites. Again, just an overview of the area itself. So the complex, the Ural-Gi belt comprises a number of targets. It's possibly one of the more well-known ones was Spectrum Metals target there at Penny West. That was sold to Ramillis for $250 million in the last few years. Again, Cobra's Perrin Vale, they've discovered copper, 10% copper there over a 5-meter intercept. So we again think this is a highly prospective region to start exploring, and we look forward to getting on the ground there in the coming months. We still hold exploration projects in Austria. These are constantly under review. We've had these for a number of years, and we're looking to divest at some point, but at this stage, we're still holding these assets within the company. The news flow going forward, I think we've sort of put out a 4-quarter plan here that sets out a series of high-level targets. We highlighted earlier about the fact that with the £1.7 million raising just completed, we will try to accelerate these, in particular, get the drill rigs back to the homeward bound target on Gendarby as quickly as possible. So I would anticipate further drilling commencing at Gendarby certainly before the end of the quarter. We're going to start airborne geophysical surveys at Pitfield. The first of those surveys will start next month, and we'll continue to build our technical databases for Staly and Walton. It's expected that we'll be doing further drilling at the Eclipse Gold Project. We're waiting for the completion of the core logging of our diamond drilling. So the intention there is to pinpoint targets along that Eclipse shear, particularly to the northwest, where we believe the shear itself is quite likely to be open at both along strike and at depth. And then the idea then would move into an airborne geophysical programs at Staveley and soil sampling at Walton, and we'll come back to soil sampling at Pitfield. So a lot of work to be done over the next 6 months, and we're fully funded to be able to do that, and we're slowly but surely building the technical team to be able to exercise those activities. So as a summary, and we'll turn it over to questions, but just as a quick summary and just to recap, we're looking to add scale at Eclipse, and we'll continue to drill out the gold mineralization both along strike and at depth, and we'll continue to seek out these multiple subparallel vein systems that we've started to identify. Within Gendarby, the homeward bound target is a clear startup target for us to go back to now. We'll put that as a priority in our drilling, and we'll continue to look at expanding the targets within Gendarby, not only to the south towards Bud's Find, but we also have a large package of targets to the north of that particular license area. The recent acquisition of these three highly prospective copper gold projects, really does change we believe, changes Empire into what would be a very significant explorer now, and obviously looking to get into development should we discover, a resource, a lode that is significant. So we are shifting our focus away from our previous history of looking into copper gold prospects across the Northern Hemisphere. We're focused here in Australia because the jurisdiction here is well known. It's highly prospective. Mining is the mining rights are clearly defined, and there's a lot of government support for getting a mining project up and running. So we believe this is the right jurisdiction. We've got the right projects, and we're well funded. And I leave the slideshow at that point to.
Yeah, Sean, if I could just put in a few summary comments from my perspective. Having now, been here, spent some time with you and the local team, and seen two of the four projects here. As I said, I'm very excited with the prospects here, and as you summarized, transitioning into a very significant copper and gold explorer and resource developer in Australia here. This is the market has changed when you see the senior companies like BHP here, but also Rio and others. They are very distinctly looking for exploration projects that have clear evidence of potential for giant mineral systems, and they're the value that the reason for that is the value that you can create in there, and we're into a good bull market here that I think has a lot of legs, and so we feel that one of the best ways we can create shareholder value, right, is to get into before others do areas that have clear potential for giant mineral systems. And while we have a more advanced project at Eclipse and Gendarby, we'll continue to work that and develop resources there. So we've got Sean here has built an excellent project portfolio from earlier stage projects, as I say, that demonstrate giant mineral potential, through to more advanced projects where we are clearly getting some high-grade gold results and building resources there and all four of which these projects are in the respective prolific mineral belts of the world's number one mining jurisdiction. So I think we're positioned extremely well to go forward in this market here. So thanks again to all shareholders out there, and there'll be a lot more exciting news to come.
Thank you, Sean, Neil, Greg. Thank you very much for your presentation today. Ladies and gentlemen, please do continue to submit your questions using the Q&A tab just situated on the top right-hand corner of your screen. But just while the company take a few moments to review those questions submitted today, I'd like to remind you that a recording of this presentation, along with a copy of the slides and the published Q&A, can be accessed via your investor dashboard. As you can see, we received a number of questions throughout today's presentation, and thank you to all investors for submitting their questions. Could I please ask that you open up the Q&A tab, read out the question and give a response where it is appropriate to do so, and I'll pick up from you at the end. Thank you.
Yes. So I think the process, I'll read out the question, and if it's appropriate, I can answer. If not, I'll ask either Greg or Neil to also contribute. And I'll just go back from the last question heading forward, because I think it would possibly be some of the questions we've already answered in the presentation. So the first question we have today to answer is, I'll just read this out. Right now, has all the drilling rigs and their crews demobbed from Eclipse Gendarby? And if so, do Empire foresee any risk with remobilising timely, considering high demand in Australia for rigs and crews? So yes, that's been a concern previously of ours about accessing drilling teams. One of the things we've discovered in the last few drilling programs is that having a project 55 kilometres north of a major town of Kalgoorlie, where most of these drilling rigs are based, has actually meant that we've been able to access rigs for smaller short-term projects, smaller campaigns quite quickly. So we haven't actually had a significant delay of getting a drill rig in the last 6 to 12 months onto any of our projects. And I don't see that changing in the short term. Most of the drillers don't even bother to set up a caravan and camp on site. They just drive back and forth. So it's a real convenient setup for us to have such a large exploration drilling resource, literally on our doorstep at the Eclipse Gendarby Project. What generally has been causing, I guess, delays in our reporting has been the backlog of assays that comes and goes within the gold industry, and that largely depends on how many exploration companies are out there doing very large programs. So it does wax and wane. We have recently just simply been paying a premium for all of our assays. So generally, when we submit, we submit it, as a fast track turnaround. That being said, it still often takes a couple of weeks, 2 to 3 weeks, to get the assay results back. So even fast tracking, occasionally it takes us a few weeks to bring all the data together before we can announce. So I don't see any major challenges or risks in that particular area. We will continue to monitor that, particularly in terms of geological resources, in terms of geological expertise. That's an area that we have to be mindful of as well, not just the drill rigs. Another question to answer. When do you expect the exploration permits to be approved for Staly and for Walton, such that the acquisition of these two assets can be fully completed with Century? The Staly acquisition is waiting for ministerial consent, and the ministerial consent, the ministry will be waiting for a final sign-off with one of the First Nation groups that have an interest in that particular area of the Victoria. The licence area contains some small patches of Crown land, and those patches of Crown land are subject to a heritage survey. So basically, we don't have any native title concerns, but what we do need to do is reach an agreement with the local Aboriginal groups that they are comfortable with us, particularly where we have overlaps into Crown land, that they don't feel the need to go and do a heritage survey in that particular area. So we don't see any particular problem there. We just have to go through a process to get the final agreement signed, and then the ministerial consent will follow. The Walton Project, we're also waiting for a final access deed. There was an objection raised over the licence application, which involved a group that were adjacent in the area that had a pipeline easement, and what we need to create there is an access arrangement so we can cross the pipeline, and that's currently been drafted. So neither of those two exploration permits are likely to be held up much longer, and we believe we'll be able to access and start work on those within the coming months. I'll just move on to the next question I can answer. Sorry, I'm having trouble clicking on the right button. There's a question about what milestones should we expect in the next 3 and 6 months. I guess the sort of workflow that we articulated sort of indicates the type of activity we're doing in terms of milestones. Certainly we anticipate having further drill results to publish for both Gendarby and Eclipse, and more information relating to the high-grade gold prospects. And we would anticipate having the geophysical survey information starting to come through in Pitfield, which will we'll be able to then present to the market to explain where we think, or what we think the geological structures are looking like, and where we think the most likely areas we should be targeting for ultimately for drilling as we narrow down the search and start to pinpoint where the most likely copper targets are at Pitfield at least. So that, I think, in the next 3 to 6 months will be our key focus. Particularly, as I said, getting more confidence in the high-grade lodes that we're now starting to find at Gendarby. Just quickly, there was a question about the Austria project. I think we sort of indicated that at the moment that's still basically on hold. It's not much work at all happening in Austria for us, so we would anticipate looking to divest those projects. And I know that, Greg, you might want to comment, but we are in conversation.
We've discussed this, I think, on the last call. The problem we've had is COVID restrictions have restricted people from actually accessing the site. There are 2 parties who've had the data room for over 12 months now and are still interested, but funnily enough, both of those parties are in Australia, and as a result haven't been able to travel to Austria yet. So given the borders have been opening up over the last couple of months, once everyone's backlogs are cleared, we're expecting to have one, if not both of those, out at site this year to undertake further due diligence. But I guess it's important to note the carry costs on those assets are very, very small. So it's not eating into any of our treasury.
Yeah, thanks, Craig. Next question. Please advise status of the latest Eclipse Project diamond drilling. Is it recently completed and awaiting results, assay results, when expected to be received? Well, we have completed the diamond drilling at Eclipse. There was nearly 1,000, just under 1,000 meters drilled, which in itself takes a considerable period of time, but that's now been completed. The core was then set out for logging. So the idea of the diamond, in principle, was to get a geological structural controls around those six holes. That also has now been completed. The sample has been cut. The core samples have been cut, sampled, and have been submitted for assay. So, I mean, the process does take, unfortunately, a number of weeks to work its way through the system. So, yeah, all assays are in, all assay samples are in, and we're now waiting for the assay turnaround. So we'll be able to report that as soon as it's available. I'd be sticking my neck out a bit to say whether that could be done in the next couple of weeks, because, as we said, we often find that the assay lab turnaround waxes and wanes depending on the sheer volume of samples coming through the door. But from my recent inquiries, I think we should be able to get those samples through within a couple of weeks. So we'll get that in and report it as quickly as possible. Go to the next question. Sorry. Right. Thanks for the presentation, all. Could I please ask the panel for their thoughts on various shareholders being yet again concerned about so many open project acquisitions requiring resources to develop, whilst not having brought any previous projects to fruition? Many believe the long depressed share price is primarily due to the fact that historically EEE/GEO/NOR have not bought or not brought any previous projects to completion point over the last 6 years. This is not a criticism, but we must have the wider market build confidence in EEE and generate a share price matching our peer company valuations. Thank you.
Well, yeah, can I tackle that one, Sean?
I'll start at maybe where we are, but I think we need I think a lot of that obviously responds to something that, I hate to say it, but before my time. But I'll start with my, my ambition, I guess, my objective, having joined and now just coming almost up to 12 months with the company, was to, was really here in Australia to establish ourselves as a prospective exploration company that had really good assets and the right commodities. So not just talking about location, not just saying, oh, we're near Kalgoorlie, not just saying we're near something else, but getting in areas where the geology, the structures were highly prospective, getting areas that I believe, we had no fear that we were going to suddenly lose tenure. We had no fears that we were suddenly going to, get bogged down with nothing, no reporting, no ability to move these assets forward. Now, obviously, I can't guarantee on any of these 3 new acquisitions that we'll make a discovery. No one can make that guarantee, but we're going to give it our very best shot. And should we make a discovery, that's where we'll add the most value to our shareholder base. There's been multiple new discoveries made in not far distant jurisdictions to where we are, and all of those have resulted in significant uplift in the valuation of the company, in having made that discovery. So I personally believe here in Australia that our best opportunity to bring value back to the company is to tackle these exciting large target areas, bring the targets in, do the work carefully, make a discovery, and hopefully get the appreciation from the market that reflects that. But perhaps I should pass back to Greg and Neil to comment on the overall strategy over the last few years.
No, I support your comments, Sean, very, very much. We're in a business exploration through to the mining end of the cycle, right? It's all about risk reward, and the country that you're in, and other, just call them non-technical risks, right, have a lot to do with your strategy. Now, if I read this question correctly, I think there's an implicit message here that you don't create value until you're actually in production, and I would disagree there, right? And particularly in this market, and particularly in the world's #1 mining jurisdiction, where you do not have the same non-technical risks as this company recently faced. So here in WA, with all those other risks taken care of essentially by the fact that we're here, we can concentrate ourselves on one key risk, which is technical risk in the projects that we select, the ground, and our approach to exploring them. This is a market to demonstrate, as I said before, that you have the potential for giant mineral systems, right? And then to go and make hopefully some discoveries on them. The the value creation through the drill bit right now in this market, and there's lots of discoveries or lots of companies out there that are creating enormous shareholder value in exploration right now, right? Yes, you do also create shareholder value once you're into production, and we recognize that, and that's why we're building Sean is building a pipeline here of projects from early stage where we can create shareholder value, right, through discovery, all the way through to creating shareholder value by creating resources at Eclipse, and through to hopefully production as well. That's how you mitigate risk in this business. But when you're in the world's greatest mining jurisdiction here, and you can get a hold of large tracts of ground in prolific belts that have not seen much exploration, that's where shareholders can do very, very well to see value creation. So it's a different strategy. Every country is not the same strategy. And I'm really glad to be here because there's more than one way to create value for our shareholders, right? Than there was in for example, Georgia. And I'm extremely happy in where we've gotten so far, and particularly in setting up this portfolio of 4 projects. Think of it this way: there's 4 chances now to create value here, right? With less overall risk than we had with one project, with much more significant risk. So the bar was higher there, right? We need to work these. We're availing ourselves to discovery opportunity. Think of it that way, right? And all of these projects, we're in a jurisdiction that's also relatively cheap to operate in. As Sean mentioned, we can drive literally to our project and where we're drilling in 50 minutes from Kalgoorlie, one of the great mining centers. Right, and that means a lot. That means that shareholders' money is going a lot farther, and we can work 12 months of the year here with 4 projects. So there's going to be a steady stream of news flow coming. I'm very excited for a number of reasons, and I hope I've touched upon a few of them there that maybe illustrated it perhaps a bit better. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Neil. I just we're on to our last question. When will you be announcing results of the diamond drill program at Eclipse? We just touched upon that, but just to re-emphasize, we will we'll be fast tracking the assays now that we've got them submitted. We'll try and get them through the assay facility, through the Q&A QC process. Sometimes we just have to be careful before we rush anything out. But I would anticipate that we would have assays available and information out in the market, within the next couple of weeks. That would be my goal. Okay. I think we've covered the questions, and I think we have.
That's perfect. I think you've addressed all those questions you can from investors. And of course, the company will review any questions submitted today, and we'll publish those responses on the Investor Meet Company platform. But just before redirecting investors to provide you with their feedback, which I know is particularly important to the company, could I please ask for a few closing comments to wrap up with?
From us?
Yes, if that's possible.
I missed that last bit. Oh, well, look, firstly, obviously, thanks to the participants and particularly our shareholders who've joined us today to participate in the presentation. We obviously are very keen and very aware of the concerns. We're keen to keep you informed. We're aware of the concerns that many of you may have about the direction the company's going. It's always difficult when you start a new journey, a new exciting new chapter of the company. It's a big shift in focus. But over the last, particularly the last 6 months, I think what we can demonstrate and starting to demonstrate is that we are, we're looking to add value. We're willing to take an educated risk in terms of taking on new assets, evaluating them. If they don't stack up, we won't hold them. And We'll do the exploration work that we need to do to make decisions about putting your money into the ground, but we don't intend to just keep wasting money in terms of chasing something that isn't going to add long-term value. The 3 new exploration projects are all greenfields. There's lots to be excited about, lots of potential. We're in the right area, but until we can produce a very clear target to drill, we're going to wait, and we're not going to suddenly rush drill rigs out there and try and get lucky. So it's about doing the hard yards, doing the technical work, de-risking the projects as we go, and based on really well-informed target selection, start to put the drill bit, as Neil mentioned, get the drill bits into the ground, because that's where the value will come. So that's my summary.
Sean, Neil, Greg, thank you very much for updating investors today. Could please ask investors not to close this session, as you now be automatically redirected to provide your feedback in order that the management team can better understand your views and expectations. This will only take a few minutes to complete, and I'm sure will be greatly valued by the company. On behalf of the management team at Empire Metals Limited, we'd like to thank you for attending today's presentation. That now concludes today's session, and good morning to you all.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.